Welcome back, everybody. My name's Tim. This is another Real Ideal Gear review, and today we're looking at an AliExpress watch, the Berny Flieger Type B Pilot Watch. This is a watch that I'm not a huge fan of the Type B Flieger style dial. I'm more of a Type A. I like the regular hour markers on there. But I thought, I'm just going to try the Type B. This is a cheap alternative, less than $100, titanium case, titanium bracelet, titanium clasp, Mecaquartz movement, so you get the 4 ticks per second. So it's not that typical quartz movement either, that typical quartz ticking. So great setup, I think, for an initial put your toe in the water type situation, which is what I'm doing right now. So let's take a look at this watch and go through the 5 things we typically go through, which are size, fitment, finish, accuracy, then legibility and lume, with some concluding thoughts at the end. And every time I wear this, I kind of surprise myself because I'm starting to really like this watch. All right, let's get started. We'll start off with size. The diameter of this watch is a 37.5 millimeter diameter watch. Now, the real interesting thing here is a 9 millimeter thick watch. This is a very thin watch, relatively speaking, to some other quartz watches out there. This one is really thin. So the proportions of this watch, and I go back to proportions when I look at these watches, it's not just about the dial width. It's about the dial width compared to the height of the watch off the wrist, or the profile of the watch off the wrist. So really kind of shows you whether or not a watch looks too chunky, whether it's too thin. All those different descriptors together really help you identify whether or not the proportions of this watch are kind of appealing for what it looks like and how it behaves on the wrist. So this watch is going to be a very low profile watch on the wrist. It's going to be awesome to wear. And the other added piece to this, it is a 20 millimeter between the lugs measurements, so that you can swap out straps on this watch. If you want to put on a dark, military style or NATO style strap on here, you can certainly do that. Other leather straps. You've got all kinds of options with a 20 millimeter between the lug measurement. Now, titanium case, titanium bracelet, titanium clasp. This is a lightweight watch. You put all these things together, this watch weighs close to what a quartz watch with just a nylon strap would weigh. And it's titanium. So it's grade 2 titanium, so it's not the highest grade, but it has that kind of darker gray color, but it is tough as nails as titanium comes. So that is, I think, something to consider as well. It's a titanium case. It's very lightweight. The proportions are really good. The one complaint I have about this watch is the size of the crown. The crown it's way too small. They could have made it a little bit bigger, a little bit easier for guys like me who have kind of meat hook type hands to get their fingers on there and actually move and manipulate the crown so that we can adjust the time. There is no date on here. It's just the time, which is fine. It does hack, so the second hand does stop when you pull the crown all the way out to adjust the time. So all those things are great, but the crown is just too small to get a hold of. I wish it was a little bit bigger. That is a ding for this watch. So those of you with big fingers, big meat hook fingers, yeah, that one might be a little bit tough to do. But again, we all have a fingernail, hopefully, at least one, that we can use to kind of pop that crown out. So it is a push-pull crown. It's not a screw-down crown. On to fitment. This watch fits awesome. Now, when it comes down to the adjustments for this watch on the bracelet itself, these are the pin link adjustments. So you're going to have to pop the pin out, and no problem. It has the arrow on the inside of the bracelet to tell you which direction to push the pin. Make sure that you use the same orientation of the pin and go the opposite direction back through the bracelet when you put it back together. Other than that, it's a typical kind of a dive watch setup. It does have 3 micro adjusts, which to me is just not enough because that means you only have 2 positions to adjust to. One thing I will say, though, about the clasp is a little bit rough as far as the machining goes, as far as the clasp clicking back together after you open it. It's a double pusher on the sides to open it, which works just tremendously fine. But when you put it back together, it just takes a little bit of maneuvering or finagling to get that thing to snap shut. Okay, so keep that in mind. And also the safety clasp, and this is all part of, I think, being a new watch. That's a friction-based safety clasp, so that takes a little bit of breaking in to kind of smooth that out as well. But again, this is less than $100. Everybody, keep your expectations in check with a watch that's less than $100. Titanium, sapphire crystal. Let's start talking about the finish. You have a sapphire crystal with AR coating. I mean, this is really turning into one of those watches where I look at and say, this is a definite work watch. There is no reason why this watch could not be worn doing all kinds of different activities out there, with it being titanium, sapphire, crystal. That whole encasement of the watch itself, or the wear of the watch, lends itself to being an awesome work watch. You have a 4 o'clock crown on here as well. So when it comes down to the fitment size, you don't have the crown sticking in the back. If you have a very flexible wrist, I don't have that flexible of a wrist to bend my hand back far enough to even touch most crowns on most watches. So the 4 o'clock position is just added. It's icing on the cake as far as overall fitment goes, but it really goes well with the whole setup as a pilot watch. And again, remember, this is a Flieger style pilot watch, so it's the clarity and the simplicity of the watch is all there. You have a beveled crystal, so if you look at this watch from the side, just above the bezel, you'll see a slight bevel to the crystal itself. So I think the chipping of the sapphire crystal is going to be very, very minimal. That might be the only concern I have, is just that the crystal is slightly elevated above the bezel. I wish it was just completely flush. I think that would be much better. Let's talk a little bit about the handset. Sword hands for the hour hand and minute hand. You have the second hand with the red tip on the end, lollipop counterweight on there. I love the handset on this. Very simple to orient your eye to and know what the time is. So to me, this is a great handset. Great. I love the little splash of color. I think I don't know how many reviews I've gone through. Whenever you put just a little bit of color on the second hand, I think it just adds a little bit of interest. It just breaks up the monotony, especially of a field watch and a pilot watch. They tend to be pretty sterile when it comes to the overall look of the watch, and I think this really helps break that all up. One other thing I want to mention about inside the dial is that you have some really interesting contrast going on geometrically, and this is something that I've learned, as a former middle school science, math, English, history. I did a little bit of art. You get licensed in all these topics, but one thing I learned about teaching just the very basics of art is the contrast of shapes. So you have at the Flieger 12 o'clock position, you have the triangle where the 12 o'clock would be, or the 60-minute mark would be. And then you have the sword-like hands, which are long, slender, line-type hands. And then you've got that lollipop counterweight on the second hand. So you've got these triangles, you've got a circle, you've got the polygons, the quadrilateral sides. You've got these different contrasting shapes going on inside the watch. And I think, again, that, much like other watches, really set these different sections apart. The triangle sets the dial apart from the hands, and the hour hand and minute hand set themselves apart from the second hand, and the second hand is separate from everything else. So it really organizes the watch and the dial very, very well. There is no polishing on this watch. It's matte gray. If you're looking for a watch that has kind of that, not necessarily tactical, but almost tactical look to it, this is the watch for you, I think, when it comes down to the overall finish. Like, this watch, I think, really fits that gray man type persona, and I've kind of nicknamed the Casio W800 as the gray man watch because it's just really bland and kind of blends in with everything. This might be the field watch or the pilot watch that kind of blends in with everything too. So this is kind of the gray man of pilot watches that are out there, and it's a Mecaquartz movement. Let's talk about accuracy. This is a Seiko Mecaquartz movement. It's the VH31, so you get 4 beats per second. So you get a little bit of that mechanical look to it, even though it's a quartz. You get the accuracy of a quartz, and you get the almost look of a mechanical watch to go along with it. So you kind of get the best of both worlds here. So I love it. It's grab and go situation. I only have to adjust it once every when we change from daylight savings time to standard time. That's all I have to do, and generally speaking, that's all that it takes to kind of correct any error in the quartz movement itself. So accuracy is great. It's that grab and go quartz thing. I love it. Now, legibility and lume. The legibility of this watch is awesome. You have a black dial, white lettering and numbers. There's no letters on there, it's all numbers, but there is no logo on here. It's a sterile dial from that perspective, so it's extremely easy to look at. It's just numbers. You have the minute track, you have the hour track on the inside, and then you got the 3 hands, and it's awesome. So the legibility is super simple. Now, what about the lume? This is less than $100. What would you expect the lume to be? It's actually really, really good. It lasts almost all night. I mean, this is one of those watches where, again, another shocker. Like, the value that this watch provides when it comes down to titanium, lume that lasts almost all night, Mecaquartz movement, grab and go, accurate, good looking watch. A little bit on the small side, but extremely thin, low profile on the wrist. It has also 50 meters of water resistance. So really, there is no real concern about this watch getting splashed on, hand washing, periodic, dunking your hands into a bucket of water for whatever you need to do it for. Extended periods of swimming time, maybe that would be a concern because, again, this is a push-pull crown. So I'm not really that thrilled about it. It's Berny. It's an AliExpress watch. So a little bit of the history of the manufacturer behind it. If it was a Casio and it was 50 meters of water resistance, I'd say swim with it all day. It's overprotected when it comes down to what they put down there for the water resistance. But this one, I would say, yeah, I would not have any worries about exposing it to water. I think extended exposure is where you might run into something over time, just because it's a Chinese AliExpress watch. So, but for 50 meters of water resistance, another great asset to this watch. The proportions are extremely good. It's lightweight, very legible. It's the Type B Flieger watch I've been looking for. Putting my toe in the water, I have to say I really like this. The cons on this watch, the small numbers, yeah, they're a little bit small, especially the hour numbers on the inner track. I'm going to have to get used to that. Is it a ding for the watch? That's really the style of the watch, so I can't really ding the design and the manufacturing on the size of the numbers for the hour track on the inside there. So yeah, it's small. It'll take a little bit of getting used to, but the clasp, that is just a little bit too rough of a machining job. It's just closing that clasp back together takes a little bit more effort than it should. And then also the crown is just too small. So I got a couple of things here that I'm not really that thrilled about. At the same time, they're not like super big functional things, because you really don't have to manipulate the crown very often, and you don't really have to take the clasp on and off that much. And really, I think it's going to be something that breaks in over time too. So what are the uses for this watch? Definite work watch. Definitely you can take this out and do whatever you need to do with this watch. It's definitely a casual watch. I don't know even about semi-casual. That might be a little bit too generic, a little bit too dull, too much of a work watch on the wrist. But it is interesting because it is a Flieger Type B dial, so that may generate some interest too in a casual, or even, I don't want to say semi-formal situation. I don't think I don't think I'd wear this watch for a semi-formal situation. But for $60, this watch is a go anywhere, do anything, everyday carry type watch. So those of you in the everyday carry world, this is a watch you really have to consider as a budget-friendly, excellent, tough as nails option for you out there. So what's the score on this watch? 9.7 out of 10. I think it has a lot of great features for it. The price being something that I think counteracts a lot of things on here. $60, you can't hardly go wrong with that. So in the comments down below, let me know what you think of this Type B Flieger watch. Let me know what you think of Berny. Berny's putting out some pretty good stuff out there on AliExpress. I'm impressed. I got my toe in the water. I may take another step in and go after another Berny watch. Let me know what you think of that. If there are any ideas that you have for me in the Berny world, let me know that as well. There you go. My name's Tim. This has been another Real Ideal Gear review. We'll catch you guys next time. Welcome back, everybody. My name's Tim. This is another Real Ideal Gear review, and today we're looking at an AliExpress watch. It is the Berny Type Woo. Let's just keep going. I'm not a huge fan of the overall design layout, or the dial layout of the frick. We'll just start over again. That was kind of gross.